Hello, welcome to the West Ham mix zone here at London Stadium, as you can probably tell by that bit. Some nice pictures down there. That's the board where everyone stops. This is where everyone comes through. Norwich City's team coach has just left, and that is the beautifully coloured in West Ham colours ceiling, if you like. You might not be so interested because Norwich have lost here. It's a bit dark in it. There we go. Let's light me up. There we go. Norwich have lost here 2-0. Quite a difficult defeat to take, really, and probably slightly worrying for some of you because of the way it happened. Worrying because Christoph Zimmermann has got a nasty injury from a Sebastian Haller tackle that wasn't even deemed a foul by referee Paul Tierney, which is fairly ridiculous because it was quite arguably a yellow card. I don't think you get away with any more, but quite clearly a yellow. And that was a nasty tackle. And in truth, that did play a part in Norwich's defending for the opening goal, which Haller scored. And that's really frustrating because at this level, I think a goal alters the dynamic of the game hugely. And I think we clearly saw that. And it was a shame as well because we were seeing some really good stuff from Christoph Zimmermann. And you can't blame this on, and I asked him himself, this is not about him coming back from things too soon. It was a contact injury. So it is what it is. It could have happened to anyone. If Ibrahim Amadou had been tackled like that, he'd have had to have come off as well. All we need to hope for now is that the injury is not is mostly the contact and not an actual ligament injury. If it's a ligament injury, we're obviously talking much longer out. We could be talking about surgery in the worst case scenario and all that, but hopefully it's a contact injury and he'll be fine going forwards. Because I think Norwich did actually quite clearly miss him, and that's not to criticise Amadou. I actually really impressed with him in a way that he did a lot of things today, and that's really promising going forwards. But in terms of leadership and impact, I thought we saw that from Zimmermann in the first 15 minutes, and it was a shame that then we obviously didn't see it anymore, and Amadou isn't quite that sort of player, and that's a bit of a shame, really. So let's hope that Christoph isn't too badly injured. Good news though with Grant Hanley, it does sound like he will be fine come Manchester City by all accounts, so I think that's good news. He won't go away with Scotland, but that at least kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off what was threatening to be a centre-back crisis. Everyone keep their fingers crossed that Teemu Pukki, but especially Ben Godfrey, are fine away on international duty, and likewise Max Aarons. It's a really interesting dynamic with Norwich at the moment because there were elements of today where they were bullied a bit. West Ham once they got ahead, they moved the ball really well. They've got some really good players, really strong, physical, and technically proficient. And so there wasn't really a lot of room for Norwich to compete with that in a lot of elements. And I think that was hard for them and a bit of a shame. And kind of emphasises the jump that a lot of these players are having to make. We can have lots of talks about tactics and how Norwich tighten up and how they need to change this, and change of personnel, and did they strengthen enough? And the situation hasn't really altered. Norwich's players are having to learn and adapt. Everyone's going to have to, certainly within the group, it's not necessarily our job to do that, but they've got to protect their confidence and make sure that they keep their belief and form in what they're doing. That does come with results, and that's the hardest element with the Premier League, because after the international break, Norwich got Manchester City at Carrow Road, so there's no particular respite from it. But there were just a few signs today, I thought, of some players losing their way a little bit. I wouldn't say feeling sorry for themselves, but I think struggling to compete when the going was getting a bit tougher. That some of the recovery runs in the second half I wasn't particularly happy with. Some of the way that some players were exposed I don't think was good enough. The way West Ham were getting through. It was a bad performance all round, and I still do look at the three playing off Teemu Pukki, who was sort of a little isolated and not involved as much as you would have liked today, and fair play to West Ham, who I'll come on to in a moment for that. But clearly Emi Buendia is not quite there at the moment, and I don't know if that's because of form, attitude, or just not being where he needs to be mentally, or in terms of his fitness and after the summer. So I don't know, but I think the break could come at a good time if he can get himself sorted, because we know there's a cracking player there, and he's already created a few goals for Norwich this season, really being at probably 50% of his effectiveness. So if you can get him back to 70, 90, 80%, then Norwich will be absolutely laughing. midfield is an issue. They're clearly missing an El Hernandez in terms of his dynamic and his physicality and the drive he provides. And, Todd Cantwell is learning. He's done incredibly well at the start of the season, but this was a tough day for him as well. And Marco Stiepermann, we know he's there because of the extra physicality that he can bring. But I think then with the ball, Norwich are losing out slightly. And it's not just him. There are players like Moritz Leitner who should be brilliant in possession, and he's either being pressed out of it or just giving the ball away. And I don't think it's the press that's catching out Norwich. I think it is their use of the ball and their lanes being caught, and then their shapes being cancelled out really by opposition. And it's an interesting trend, because if teams have already figured out how to stop Norwich, then Norwich are going to have to adapt in part to make it work. They can't just keep doing the same things hoping they'll be good enough, because Premier League teams tactically are on a completely different level to the Championship, and they will adapt to make sure that they beat you, and Norwich therefore have to do the same, otherwise this is going to be a very long season. Excuse me. Big credit, I have to say though, to West Ham, because I thought once they got ahead, their front four, and they did it probably about 10 minutes before they went ahead, their front four pressed Norwich really well. They made life very difficult between Norwich's defensive line and midfield. And although Norwich broke it every so often, West Ham were always able to come back round and win the ball back. I mean, they really played at a high level, and to be honest, they kind of were on a different plane physically to Norwich, and we haven't seen many teams do that. And I think maybe when you look at how the effectiveness of someone like Max Aarons, you can see that he's dealing with players who are physically better than him at the moment, and he's a young man. He's still got time, of course, loads of time, but that is maybe where the difference in level has been so far this season. And I just picked Max as an example rather than to knock him out. But I have to say, on the other flank, I thought Jamal Lewis was outstanding, man of the match today. Check out my column from last week over at The Athletic, because it's there, and I think it makes the point that for a man who possibly has been taken a little for granted at times in recent months, not the case on that performance today. He was a shining light, and he'll go to the international break with Northern Ireland in really good form, and I hope he comes back and carries it on, because it's not just today. I have to say, this start of the season, I think Jamal has been superb and has made the step up probably as well as anyone, you'd have to say. I mean, it's difficult to judge Ben Godfrey perhaps, because he's had a few different partners to deal with, but there's still rays of light on which have you. And I have to say, I thought Ibrahim Amadou, when he came on for Zimmerman, did really well. International break, enjoy it. Worth bearing in mind, I'll probably do some bits and bobs over on the YouTube channel and on Facebook. Thanks for watching. So keep an eye out for those over the international break. Make sure you subscribe or like my Facebook page, and of course there'll be analysis and some really good bits hopefully over the course of the international break coming your way over at The Athletic. If you haven't subscribed, make sure you do before September the 2nd, early I would say, because you'll still get the cheap discount, which is in the a link in the description of this video hopefully. And do that, because there's some really good content, not just Norwich based either, but loads of other stuff. But for here, Norwich lost 2-0. Haller got the first goal. Yarmolenko got the second. That was a nice moment for him, because he's been out, one in either half. All fairly horribly routine stuff for long-standing Norwich City followers in the Premier League. But let's get the international break out of the way and see how the next handful of games progresses, to see if this Norwich side can adapt and make life a little bit more comfortable than it perhaps has been in other seasons. Fingers crossed. Finished here 2-0 to West Ham.